Shame almost never comes from enemies. It usually comes from people who knew you before the glow-up, before the image was polished, before the story was edited into something shiny and easy to sell. The people who saw the raw version don't forget what they noticed, even when the world moves on. For years, Prince Harry spoke as if Meghan Markle only faced rejection after stepping into royal life, as if criticism magically appeared the moment titles and tiaras entered the picture. The narrative suggested that everything before royalty was supportive, misunderstood, and unfairly judged only after fame. But according to someone from her life long before palaces and protocol, the first real rejection happened much earlier. That rejection didn't come from tabloids or institutions. It came quietly from an ordinary family who felt something was off and chose not to ignore it. Before global attention, Meghan Markle lived in a much smaller world. A world without palace advisors or image managers. This was where ambition appeared without filters and patterns formed, before anyone labeled them destiny. That world included a man named Joe Guiliano, and more importantly, his family. Families notice things early. They watch how someone handles conflict, how loyalty is returned, how quickly relationships turn transactional. They don't judge once, they observe over time. And when families pull back, it's rarely dramatic. It's quiet pauses, delayed plans, and commitments that slowly stop moving forward. According to accounts connected to Joe Guiliano, his family didn't step back out of jealousy or social pressure. They sensed instability, emotional closeness followed by sudden distance, intensity that didn't always feel grounded, ambition that often seemed to outrun connection. These weren't accusations, they were hesitations. And in family dynamics, hesitation is often the final signal before separation. At the time, that distance was reportedly reframed as misunderstanding, drive mistaken for coldness, ambition confused for detachment. Resistance was interpreted as proof of being meant for something bigger. There was no palace to blame then, no tabloids, just a family choosing not to move forward. Years later, when Prince Harry entered her life, he didn't encounter those early hesitations. He met a streamlined past. Old relationships were presented as closed chapters that required sympathy, not scrutiny. Harry leaned naturally into the role of protector. That instinct was genuine, but real emotion becomes risky when paired with selective storytelling. Inside royal circles, background checks don't focus on scandal. They look for patterns. While Joe Guiliano's family was never flagged as an issue, their absence from Meghan Markle's public narrative didn't go unnoticed. A former partner whose family quietly stepped back. A first marriage to Trevor Engelson that ended abruptly, with little shared closure. Each detail alone seemed minor. Together, they suggested a rhythm, closeness followed by withdrawal, progress followed by reinvention. Harry didn't see warnings. He saw injustice. People close to him say he interpreted family disengagement as narrow-mindedness. Concern became cruelty. Caution became prejudice. This was the first real fracture between perception and pattern. As the engagement approached, advisors at Kensington Palace quietly reviewed these early silences, not to stop the union, but to understand it. They asked why past relationships lacked continuity, why families drifted instead of integrating. These weren't confrontations, they were preparations. Harry felt them as betrayal. Every hesitation felt like rejection. Every question felt like an attack on the woman he loved. He leaned further in emotionally, dismissing caution as bias. The prince who had always struggled with abandonment mistook warning for it. When references to Joe Giuliano's family surfaced again, Harry brushed them aside. To him, early hesitation confirmed what he already believed. Meghan Markle had always been too driven for conventional spaces. Distance was envy. Concern was fear. This mindset shaped everything that followed. Palace advisors are trained to look for continuity, long-term friendships, family integration, relationships that don't vanish. In Meghan's case, they found fragmentation, different circles, minimal overlap, people who once mattered disappearing entirely. When this was raised carefully, Harry bristled. To him, the past didn't matter. Love changed everything. Institutions don't study the past to punish. They study it to predict. Repetition is their concern, and repetition hides in departures, not rivals. Over time, the early warnings began to echo. Joe Giuliano's family no longer felt like an isolated case. Trevor Engelson's marriage no longer felt like bad timing. What once looked like coincidence began to resemble precedent. Shame replaced anger, not toward Meghan Markle, but toward himself. The warnings hadn't come from enemies or tabloids. They had come from ordinary families with nothing to gain, and he had dismissed them all. Institutions can't rewind marriages. They manage outcomes. Inside Buckingham Palace, concern shifted into calculation. Not accusations, but indicators. Patterns that only make sense in hindsight. Royal stories rarely end with explosions. Sometimes they end with distance. The palace adjusted. Exposure reduced. Formalities remained. Warmth receded. Joe Giuliano's family, once a footnote, became a preface. They hadn't rejected worth. They had rejected permanence.